If I could ask the December 14th Metro North Committee to come to order. We have three public speakers. The first is Brad Brashears, followed by Orrin Getz. Is somebody time this?
Hello and good morning. My name is Bradley Brashears, and I'm a transportation planner with the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. I was also co-author for a recent report we produced on behalf of the New York City Transit Writers Council called the Freedom Ticket, a Southeast Queens Proof of Concept. Our Freedom Ticket proposal would enable riders traveling from MTA railroad stations within the city to ride for a reduced rate and have the ability to transfer to subways and buses. We propose that the monthly rate be no more than $215 per month, close to the cost of the express bus rate. We are recommending a two-tiered New York City fare system that has a standard fare and a premium fare, with subways and buses charging a standard fare and services like express buses and railroads charging the premium fare. Our proposal addresses three key issues: capacity, cost and financing, and implementation strategy. First, we found that during both the AM and PM peak periods, there are typically 20,000 empty Long Island Railroad seats passing through Southeast Queens going to and from Penn Station. Additionally, when traveling in Brooklyn, approximately 50% of the seats are empty during both peak periods. Second, basing our calculations on MTA headquarters cost projections, we found that the cost of the proof of concept to be $4.3 million. We believe that the fairest way to pay for this is with a partnership with the City of New York. This would create a tool allowing localities to pay into reduced fares when the capacity for additional riders exists. And for an implementation strategy, we are recommending a three-phase rollout starting in 2017 with the proof of concept in Southeast Queens, 2019 for Phase 2, and Phase 3 in 2021 with expansion to Metro North Railroad. Southeast Queens was chosen because it has the largest number of railroad stations at least 0.8 miles from the nearest subway. Also, Southeast Queens commuters are forced to choose between a fast and expensive trip on the Long Island Railroad and a longer and more affordable trip on subways and buses. Freedom Ticket requires minimal expenditures, substantially reduces travel times, and creates a more equitable railroad fare for riders from many New York City neighborhoods that are isolated from the subway system. It also allows the MTA to maximize the use of all of its assets by making the railroads a more affordable option within the city. Southeast Queens has a ridership that would greatly benefit from increased transit options and is therefore the ideal place to start. And with that, we hope that you'll give serious consideration to this fare proposal within the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz, followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Orrin Getz. Real quick, I realize that the PCAC is pushing for lower fares for the people from Queens. Unfortunately, in Rockland County, we didn't have that. We had 2 fare increases and a cut in service. Now, as I've mentioned previously, it costs more in a monthly commute from Rockland County into Midtown Manhattan than the equivalent commute on the Hudson Line from Westchester County into Midtown Manhattan. And they have far more service than we do, and we don't see anything on the horizon to get more service. Also, in the 5-year capital program, all Rockland County is going to get is some improvements at the platform at the train station in Spring Valley and some drainage improvements. That's all we're going to get. A lot of things happening on the east side of the Hudson, but we're not getting it. And as I've said before, there's a really critical need to make the Suffern Station handicapped accessible. New Jersey Transit's willing to work with the MTA on this one, but the MTA has to take the initiative. It's essential. And it was good news that we did hear that Orange County was able to get an additional midday train. That's great. But there's little news about the West of Hudson study that's been languishing for many, many years. And that includes access to Stewart Airport, upgrade of the Port Jervis line. And those are very, very critical things, plus a midpoint yard somewhere west of Salisbury Mills, Cornwall. That would greatly improve service on the Port Jervis line. The other thing that's incredible is that I've heard many, many, many excuses on why there's no station at Woodbury Common. The thing is that Woodbury Common just got approval and built a 2,000-car garage, and that was okay. But to put a train station in, all we're doing is getting excuses. This is a very, very big tourist attraction in the New York City area. Metro North trains go right past it. they should be stopping. We should be getting, instead of excuses, ideas of how that train station can be built. It would be a big revenue generator for Metro Northwest of Hudson Services. And we've got to stop making the excuses and come up with plans to build that station. It is critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. Murray Bowden, please.
Good morning. My name is Murray Bowden, and I live in Hartsdale, New York. It would be in the best interest of MTA to stop blowing the train whistles at 125th Street. Thank you.
If there are no additional speakers, may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second? Those in favor? Any opposed? Passes. Are there any changes to the 2015 work plan?
No, it's in the agenda, and there are no changes.
In that event, may we have your president's report?
Yes. Last month, we held an emergency preparedness exercise in our Brewster Yard in partnership with the many responders from Putnam County and over 20 participating agencies. While we are required to conduct full-scale emergency simulation every year, these drills also provide an opportunity to partner with local first responders on joint training and emergency preparedness. This exercise and the planning was a real collaborative effort. Earlier this year, the Brewster Fire Department reached out to Metro North to partner on training and jointly conducting an emergency preparedness exercise. Ensuring public safety and security to our customers, employees, and the public at large is the most important thing that we do. This is why Metro North has already trained this year almost 1,900 first responders in its passenger train emergency response curriculum. We strive to prevent accidents from taking place, but nevertheless being part of us being safe means being ready to react quickly and carefully in the event that something goes wrong. Our exercise in Brewster helped us to do that, and we appreciate the assistance of Putnam County Executive Mary Ellen Odell, Brewster Mayor James Schoenig, and all the teams of first responders who participated with us in the exercise. While we're on the subject of safety, I am pleased to announce that Justin Raymond Vanashek will be joining Metro North next month as our Vice President of System Safety. Mr. Vanashek has over a decade of experience in transportation industry and is currently the Chief Safety, Security, Emergency Preparedness, and Regulatory Compliance Officer for Keolis Commuter Services in Boston. Keolis operates the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority commuter rail system. I want to thank Joe Strini for capably serving as Acting Chief Safety Officer during this transitional period. In operations, for the month of November, Metro North operated at 92.5%, with year-to-date reliability standing at 93.3%. 1.1% of all trains were delayed greater than 15 minutes. The AM and PM peak service operated at 91.6%, off-peak was 90.4%, and weekend service was 96.3%. During November, we had an increase in train delays of 6 to 10 minutes due to the slip-slide conditions. However, overall train delays due to slip-slide conditions taking place during this year's lease season, primarily September to November, was the third lowest in the last 10 years and 30% below average. West of Hudson service operated at 92.3% during November. And finally, the fleet's mean distance between failure operated at a high of almost 296,000 miles during the month of October, and year-to-date is above goal. The higher the MDBF, the more reliable the equipment and the service that we provide our customers. With the official start of winter almost upon us, we are completing our winter preparations for the rolling stock fleet and the infrastructure. Last year, we purchased additional snow fighting equipment, including 2 more cold blowers for a total of 5, allowing us to clean yard switches and third rails simultaneously at more locations. In addition, we purchased at that time an additional front-end loader and backhoe, enabling us to plow more of our right-of-way in order to access the track interlockings and the power substation locations. And we have also completed retrofitting our 3 jet hot air blowers for greater power and fuel efficiency. Most importantly, we have taken steps to ensure our customers are well informed before, during, and after storm events with timely and accurate information through station announcements, platform display signs, email alerts, social media, special notices, and service status box updates on the website. The Metro North Train Time app also provides real-time service status on your smartphone or your computer. And with these communication elements, we are now able to provide more information in a timelier manner during emergencies. During any severe weather event, our goal is to provide customers with the best and fastest and safest service available and to return to regularly scheduled service as soon as possible. Our complaints are continuing their downward trend and have dropped 4% from September to October, breaking September's record when the complaints were the lowest since March of 2008. And since January, complaints have dropped 54% system-wide. As part of our ongoing recruitment effort, I am pleased to report that Metro North has hired 31 veterans so far this year. Now almost 11% of our diverse workforce is made up of veterans. These individuals bring the same sense of dedication and conviction they displayed in the military to their daily duties, providing a most important public service. The Connecticut Department of Transportation fare increase of 1% goes into effect on the Connecticut portion of the New Haven line on January 1st of 2016. This is the 5th of 7 consecutive annual increases requested by CDOT to help finance the new M8 cars. This increase will affect ticket prices for travel that's between Connecticut and New York Station and between stations within Connecticut. Some fares may not change due to the rounding and small percentage of the increase. The fare increase does not affect travel to and from stations solely within New York State. We began communicating the new fare information to our New Haven customers earlier this month. Our third and final girder launch for the new New York Bridge is planned for this coming Friday night, December 18th, into Saturday morning, the 19th. The first two went extremely well, were extremely well coordinated, and we are anticipating the same with this one. Metro North will reduce overnight Hudson Line train service as the workers building the new bridge install the 700-ton girder and push it over the tracks at Tarrytown. We've coordinated with the new New York Bridge team to minimize the impacts on the Hudson train service while the service is underway, and the coordination ensures that no passenger trains are beneath the work site when the girder assemblies are moving overhead. So this means fewer trains than normal will operate during the construction periods, and we will adjust our schedule slightly this Friday night to accommodate the work. We greatly appreciate that the new New York Bridge team is working with Metro North and has scheduled their work to minimize service impacts to our customers. And finally, I want to mention that these popular holiday traditions are taking place now in Grand Central Terminal. The annual Grand Central Holiday Fair, located in Vanderbilt Hall, features over 70 different merchants and runs until December 24th. And the New York Transit Museum's annual Holiday Train Show, now through February 21st, features Lionel trains that once again capture the hearts and imaginations at the Transit Museum, where Metro North, New York Central, and subway trains depart from a miniature Grand Central Terminal. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Yes.
Excuse me. Is now the time to ask a couple of operations report questions or later?
By all means.
Oh,
Now.
that means now, I guess. Thank you. Joe, thanks. I have two questions. One, with respect to the performance summaries. Metro North has a slightly different categorization than Long Island Railroad. I was comparing the two. When we have for Metro North maintenance of equipment, is that scheduled or unscheduled, or is there? And the same thing with engineering. I'm just trying to pinpoint why certain delays are occurring and whether they were anticipated and we have to deal with it, or whether it was something else.
With regards to maintenance of equipment, there are no scheduled rolling stock delays. Those are all unscheduled events. With regards to maintenance of way, AKA engineering, on the Metro North report, the engineering category encompasses both scheduled and unscheduled delay work.
Would it be more helpful to split that out for us so we could tell what's scheduled and what's not?
You know, I'll sit down, Glenn and I will have a conversation. Let us take a look at it, and I'll see how difficult that'll be. And if it's not difficult, then we will.
It would show
Yeah.
certain problems or not, whether certain problems exist or not. The second question is the elevator and escalator operating report. Something we've discussed periodically away from the meetings.
Yeah.
Similar to what you do for delays, it might be helpful to do more than just give us an overall percentage, but identify perhaps, just to throw out an idea, an escalator or elevator that seems to have a more than just a 1 in a million shot of going out. And so that we can identify that and maybe take certain steps, because the overall percentage doesn't really help us in that respect.
Knowing that it's of personal interest to you, I'd be more than happy to continue the type of reporting we've been giving you. You know, we have a lot of this contracted out, and that's why I was coming back to you with the contracted reports, and we are keeping on top of our contractors. And again, I'll sit down with Glenn, we'll take a look, and I'll see whether or not I can't generate a more regular report that would factually point out where we're having the most problems.
And then we take steps to,
Sure.
Same thing with In-Grand Central, there's one that's always out.
Yes, it is. It's the same.
And I actually prefer to walk, but I speak on behalf of most of the customers who don't. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yes?
If we're going to talk about the operations report, I was going to hold this for safety, but I'll just raise it here. So I think this is the third time I've raised this topic, and Joe, you were very sensitive around this topic, and both times I've raised it. But we have yet again on page 71, 3 trespassing notes, and I would love to talk about or understand, knowing the personal sensitivities around whether that was unwarranted trespassing or unintentional or intentional for self-harming or whatever the case may be. I just want to see if there's anything we should be doing around this topic, because it seems to just keep coming up, and I feel like I'm seeing more of these trespassing, and you're nodding your head. So can we just talk about it? Because I feel I don't want to keep, obviously you're thinking about it, I'm thinking about it, we're all seeing it, and it's starting to feel like a emerging and uncomfortable trend.
If I may, we've reached out to virtually all of the railroads up in the Northeast to see what they each do. We've also reached out to the State Office of Mental Health. We've received some information from them about doing some things. In headquarters here, working with David Mayer, we've actually, he's done some review with some very well-known people on this topic. We're actually trying to make a decision, because we have now been in a position where we've had some experts tell us not to do certain things, and other experts have told us that it may be helpful to do something at an awareness level. We've also reached out to Connecticut because this is a record year, by the way. I think we're up to number 17 right now. We've never had more than 13 in any given year in the last 10 years, and this has been a record year. So we are looking at a number of things. I'm trying to figure out what the best thing to do is, because I said there is quite a bit of controversy as to whether or not we should be putting something up. The irony is that many of the agencies that we've talked to and the other roads we've talked to, most of their trespasser incidences occur at stations, are in fact are the minority. Our situations develop along the right-of-way, which is kind of unusual. So by maybe some awareness at stations, although it may be helpful, we haven't decided as to whether or not we should actually move ahead with this. So.
One just follow-on point. I wonder if, given that you obviously found some data historically. I would ask that we start tracking more explicitly the trespassing. Here, you got to sort of hunt and peck through the operations page, and I would ask maybe on a temporary basis we more explicitly track this topic, because it's just arising more, to your point.
I want you to be aware that David Mayer is fully involved in this, and Kirsch as well, and that we are talking about it as an MTA response. So I would ask you that the same way you're bringing it up here, please bring it up in the safety committee meeting, because we're meeting with Tom on it. We've been talking about it, and as you're hearing right now, there's a number of things. When you first said it was a sensitive topic, I was wondering where you were going, but it's sensitive from a number of reasons, because even when it's a trespasser strike, there comes a point where whether it was an intentional or unintentional, we don't get into that, and we more or less call it police activity. And these are the types of things that I want to discuss with the board, because from the same standpoint that we follow a protocol, that isn't always what the social media is doing. And I'm not saying that I want to go against the social media, but at some point there's a question as to whether or not we're withholding facts when what we're trying to do is follow what I would call a proper protocol for the best way to deal with it. So the same way when we go into the reporting, there's an opportunity to have a discussion there, and I think that's where we should be having the discussion and talk about it as an MTA-wide situation.
Mr. Mordler?
Joe and Pat as well, this may sound anomalous with 60-degree temperatures, but may I respectfully suggest that this might be a good time on the outdoor stations to check the treads on the stairs to make sure that they are such that they can appropriately be dealing with the ice and snow that may actually come someday.
Let me also remind you that both last year and this year, we were able to keep our maintenance away forces going all the way to January, and Glenn's going to be given a report, but we've had a tremendous 2 years of productivity. We are looking at that, and beyond that, we're also looking, the state of Connecticut is experimenting with running some piping through their platforms to see if they can avoid having snow actually land on the platforms. We're looking at a number of things, so I don't want you to think that we're not looking at it, but I will take what you're saying into. Okay.
Any other questions? In that event, Mr. Strini, may we have your safety highlights?
The report is filed on pages 15, 16, and 17 in your book. I will certainly answer any questions. I do want to highlight two things. One, on the enhanced safety actions, is that we had our fourth quarter stand down on December 2nd, and all Metro North employees participated. It went extremely well. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is also the, which I mentioned previously, the Best Foot Forward campaign, because slip, trip, and fall continues to be our #1 customer injury, will be distributed this evening on our trains outbound out of Grand Central. So those of you who ride will see, hopefully, a seat drop about slip, trip, and fall. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yes.
I have a question on the sleep apnea study. What happened to the 25% who went back for a reevaluation of the engineers?
We're still working on the a small percentage of them. I believe there's actually a typo that I just saw in the book, but we are down to it says a very small percentage that are finishing up with their further study. They've been through the initial 25% were referred, and we're down to a very small percent that are completing that, and we should be done by the end of the year. Pardon me? My book says 6% is left.
I'm sorry, the variance for the purposes of this report is from 25 to 6%.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
Joe,
Brown.
is the 6% 6% of 25% or 6% of the total?
If I could just clarify something, out of all of the engineers that went through the screening, 25% were referred to the sleep disorder consultant. We're going to report in a future time what percentage of that 25% actually had some type of a sleep disorder. The 6% is 6% of the total engineer population. Those folks are still in the final stages of the evaluation and treatment by Persante, the consultant, and they will be completed in this month of December.
Any other sleep apnea issues? I have one comment that I'd like to make. Metro North has the advantage of having a large number of engineers compared to many of the properties in the United States. The study that's been done is a pilot that hasn't been conducted elsewhere, and the results may be applicable to other agencies. I think that when this is completed, you should at least share that with the other agencies to profit from it.
Just for clarification, the entire industry is watching us. We were the first agency to be identified as having this as a problem. And we have been meeting with all of our partners on this, including all the commuter rail authorities. Everybody is watching. We're working with it to not only, as we've gone through, trying to deal with what was anticipated as what we thought was going to be the number that would be affected. We actually found that 25% was below what we thought it was going to be. Now what we're working with is that as they go through this, our job is to monitor that they are following through with their doctors and with the medical facilities to deal with their issue going forward. And as these numbers come out, and even Ann could tell you, the FRA is asking us on a regular basis, as well as the NTSB, what's coming out of our reports, because I'm sure as well as our putting it out, the FRA is looking to deal with it as a national issue as we go forward. And we'll see it in more departments as we go forward as well.
Mr. Ballin, did you have an issue?
Not on sleep. That was interesting, though. Confidential close call reporting system. It says in our materials that they received, a number of the reports and conducted analyses of certain of them, and then it kind of stops. But it's a large number. I wonder if someone could just explain it a little.
Yeah. That basically, that 156 represents the peer review team. That's the number that they have been able to vet so far. They take each case that's reported. It goes to NASA. It gets scrubbed. The peer review team then gets information about whatever the report was, what the case was, and then the peer review team meets, I believe they're meeting twice a month still, to review that. And we've actually had discussion with them recently. The support team's actually had discussion with them about possibly increasing the number of times that they meet on a monthly basis to do more cases. So we've got several things in the mill working with the peer review team. For example, a temporary speed restriction reminder for engineers, that kind of thing, so that they have a job aid in the cab when they approach a temporary speed restriction. But there's a number of things going on.
But thanks for that. But the first thing I assume you have to do is check the facts, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm getting in the middle of this. So then once you check the facts, then you do the rest of it. But if it leads to the conclusion that there's a certain set of facts, circumstances, or person or persons who are causing near or rather close calls, what are the steps to take to identify that and then to remedy the situation?
I'm going to respond on that because if you remember, this thing is being done in a blind, okay? And the idea behind it is it'll tell us situations that are out there, but it does not give us the information for individuals. And that is why it's done through NASA, so it's completely anonymous. So you get to find out what your problems are, all right, and people can be totally open. So for example, where before, if the one that Joe's already alluded to, if an engineer felt that they approached a temporary speed restriction and they could have potentially missed that, they would not have reported something like that because, indeed, that could have led to them being taken out of service. So what it does now is it turns and says, you've had so many instances where engineers felt that that might have been a situation. So it makes us look at, do we have to do more in terms of reminding people where a temporary restriction is? So if you understand how the program works, it's supposed to give you the basis for your problems, but not go to the individuals, so that way that you have an open, candid discussion, and that's what these bi-monthly meetings are for, is to take the criteria that's coming in and say, okay, do we have an issue here? We've gotten a number of reports along this line. If it actually got to a situation, John, that would be different. It wouldn't go into close call reporting. We would deal with that situation because that would have been an incident that we actually would hold a hearing for and deal with it in that manner.
Do you get that? Thank you. Do you get enough to be able to identify the situation? For example, if it happens more often in a certain time of day or a certain day of the week, or
Part we do. We actually in discussion with NASA and the FRA about giving us more. And a good example is that maybe something happened at milepost 19. Well, as you well know, we have 3 milepost 19s, one on the Hudson, one on the Harlem, one on New Haven. So it's a bit of a work in progress, and we are developing information with them all the time. The other thing too, that the number seems or may seem a bit high, the 414. What they've encouraged us to do and what they've encouraged the employees to do is report absolutely everything, even though it may not be a qualifying event because it's good data. It's data that NASA and the FRA wants to see. Observed situations or events that qualify in another realm due to equipment damage or personal injury or something are non-qualifying events, so therefore, but yet they're still going into the database to get good data about what's taking place on our railroad.
Any other safety issues to be discussed? In that case, we'll have the police report from Chief Rabin. It starts on page 18.
Overall crime is down, but the only increases in grand larceny and auto larcenies. Any questions?
I notice in the arrest report that you have 3 arrests for terrorist threats. What's that all about?
Bear with me. I'm not familiar with each individual.
I can't hear you.
I'm not familiar with each individual arrest, but they could have been for anything up to threatening people on the
I
train.
think the board ought to be told what's going on here.
I will get you that information and get back to you, sir.
Okay. What do you define as a terrorist threat?
Any activity which would cause alarm and or discomfort to our passengers or our employees. Could be someone on board with threatening the employees with crime.
That concerns me because terrorist threats has a connotation that is very troublesome, more so than just an ordinary threat. May I take a suggestion or give you a suggestion?
Sure, sir.
In the event that this falls in the category you have just mentioned, namely ordinary threats between passenger or somebody else, as contrasted with something that is really a terrorist threat, please redefine your reports.
Mr. Diaz, would you like to answer that question?
Son? Yeah. Making it is a bomb threat. Somebody calls in a bomb threat, that's making a terrorist threat.
If that's what this is, that's something else. That, I still think we ought to know what these are.
And again, detectives do a fantastic job in that area, just like to, know that they do a very good job in investigating that.
I have no doubt that you do a superb job. I have no doubt whatsoever that you provide the optimum of protection that can be provided under any circumstances. It just seems that we have a responsibility to be able to monitor this in our role as members of the board, if the board has meaning at all.
Any additional comments? Yes, Mr. Balin.
On the arrest classification, I just note that there are, for calendar year 2015, 0 arrests in the entire system for panhandling, and that the arrests for public lewdness are significantly down. I just I'm curious because observation and news reports seem to indicate that you would expect the opposite. So I'm curious if there's any comment, and if that's too vague, just specifically, maybe just I'll leave it at those two, the panhandling and the lewdness. Thank you.
So, we would only do the arrest for aggressive panhandling. We have determined that we're better off addressing those specific homeless issues in other methods, with ejections, offering shelter, offering various services provided by the city and the MTA. We work closely with the BRC. Affecting arrests was not doing anything to curb the problem.
I just wanted to make the inquiry. I don't think now's the time or place to have, from my perspective, where I sit, a follow-up, but I think it's important to note that panhandling arrests are 0 and public lewdness arrests are significantly down this year, and make the observation.
Thank you for the observation. We'll take this into account. Anything else? I believe we have an action item. President?
An action is required by the committee to adopt Metro North's 2015 November forecast, 2016 final proposed budget, and 4-year financial plan for 2016 to 2019. These items will be voted on by the full board on Wednesday, December 16th for final board approval.
All in favor? Any opposed? It'll move to the full board. Information items?
The proposed 2016 Metro North Committee work plan for the committee's review is a draft work plan for 2016 that has been prepared for the Metro North Committee based on reports that both railroads provided this past year. The draft work plan was coordinated with Long Island Railroad's work plan for consistency in reporting to the committee during the months we jointly meet and also during the months that we meet separately. The committee will approve the final work plan in January. Under the track program quarterly update, I would like to ask that Glenn Hayden be able to give a report at this time.
Certainly.
Thank you. This begins on page 42 of your book. This year we spent most of our tie efforts on the Hudson and the Port Jervis. To date, and of course these figures are as of the end of November, we have been continuing to work due to the wonderful weather we're getting out there. We put in almost 39,000 ties. Last year we had almost 43,000. We're hoping if things keep going like they are that we'll beat last year. Rail, we put in 12.6 miles of rail, significantly more than last year. It was about 2.5 miles. In surfacing, again, we did about 39 miles. Last year, a little over 109. In terms of switches, we put in 49 switches around the system this year, up from 33 last year. Grade crossings, we had another good year with 16 scattered around the territory. And field welds, we've welded over 1,400 joints. We are continuing to weld. Last year we did 1,300. Our rail vac, we're down this year because we didn't have the significant long-term outages. We've been working on spots at night. We've put in over 5,000 ties. Last year it was closer to 8,000. And in Grand Central Terminal, we have embarked upon a program to renew rail, block ties, and direct fixation fasteners. You can see the tracks that we've done. Track 19 actually just was returned to service this past week. Our automated inspections, Sperry Rail, the Aurora is what is known as the machine vision. We've had FRA geometry car out here. Mermac geometry car ran one survey in April. We actually ran the second survey the first week in December. And the track loading vehicle is important. It guides us. That's why we spent a lot of time on the Upper Hudson this year. Is last year's runs showed us that we had some impending problems up there, so we put a lot of ties and rail on the Upper Hudson. If you go to our structures work, we've done a lot of overhead bridges on the lower end of the New Haven. We finished off North Berry Avenue. We're some slight cosmetic work on Hillside, and West Street was mostly structural. We will finish that up before the year is over. Undergrade Bridge Program, most of our efforts this year were on the Port Jervis. We did about 6 bridges over there. And we did rail top culverts at 2 locations. The Upper Hudson we completed, and 1 spot on the Lower Harlem. We finished 1 track, and we will be going back next year. We've already fabricated the material. Continuing with our structures work, we replaced 3 bridge decks on the Harlem, 11 on the New Haven. You'll note that it says including track 3 at Devon. That's 850 timbers on that, so it's a kind of unusual one. And on Port Jervis, we did 4 decks. The Moodna Viaduct we did not renew complete. We put in 70 or 80 spot ties. At Walk Drawbridge, as at the time of this report, we had put in 60 of 90 of the pivot pier roller shafts. We're now up to 70. We will finish off all 90 by the end of the year. We did a retaining wall in Mount Vernon. We have our bridge hit monitoring system in on 4 bridges. I reported on that earlier this year. And we've put in over 3,200 direct fixation fastener repairs on the Park Avenue Viaduct and in Grand Central. Right-of-way fencing, we're closing in on about 2/3 of a mile. Obsolete materials, for those of you who ride the Harlem, you'll notice that that big, ugly cable tower north of Williams Bridge is slowly coming down. That should be down by the end of the year. And we had 4 bridges in the state of Connecticut we did structural repairs to, and we do various what are called railroad maintenance memorandums. Those are minor steel repairs and concrete repairs found by Connecticut DOT's on-call inspection services. Stations and facilities work, I'm very proud of this. You'll see the list of stations we have worked at. We've embarked on a big campaign to change over our lighting fixtures to LEDs. Depending on the size of the station, our annual utility bill for lighting alone is dropping between $1,500 and $2,000 for each one of these stations. We worked this year on the Hudson, Harlem, and Pascack Valley line. We also repair our own facilities that the customers don't see, but we need them working fine. So we've done substation doors and roofs. CILs are the central instrument locations for our signals, and the employee facilities. That last bullet says that our reoccurring monthly bill at Beacon is expected to be reduced by 50%. I now have the information. It was actually 43%, so we were close. This is kind of a summary slide that shows you how we're doing with respect to our goal for this year. And in almost all of the categories, we beat our goal. Ties were a little less. That's because we had a huge goal this year, and we put in a lot of rail. You'll see that we were way over on rail. And switch renewal, we're still putting in switches, so I think we'll be about 100% of goal by the end of the production season. Thank you if there's any questions.
Hats off to you and your crew. You've had a banner year. May the weather continue to smile.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mordler.
I have 3 questions, if I may. You indicated you have done 16 grade crossings. What have you done?
That is the renewal of the crossing surface, the pavement, and the striping at the highway railroad interface.
Does that include lighting? Does it include stop signs in front of?
Most of the signage is the purview of the municipality or the state, and working with the safety department, we have done some extensive work. The notable one was Roaring Brook Road in Chappaqua. The flashers, gates, and bells we do as a standalone program. For example, this weekend past, we put in gates on a crossing at Orinoco Road on the Waterbury, which just had flashing lights previously. So that is above and beyond this.
Do you use LEDs for that purpose?
The new lights are LEDs. The lenses are bigger and they're much brighter. It's very, very nice. They work out. So every time we replace lights, we go to LEDs.
Second, Hurricane Sandy compounded erosion along the Bronx waterfront on the Hudson line. What, if anything, have you been able to do about that, or can you, or do you propose to do?
Actually, as part of our Sandy renewal program, we've been putting down riprap, which are large stones along the banks of the Hudson. And I can get you the exact figures. I don't have them with you now,
okay.
but we are
You are
taking care of
focused on it.
Yes, sir.
Third and finally, you have a section on obsolete materials that you're removing. There is a walking bridge south of the Riverdale station on the Hudson line that has been there forever and rusting away forever, and one day is going to fall down. Would you take a look at that, please?
I will. I can tell you some of those bridges are not ours, and the adjacent property owner, we maintain them for them, so we may not be able to just rip it down without their
This
approval.
one's
But I will
totally
look.
abandoned,
I will
not
look.
in use, and hanging
Yep.
down into the water. And my only point is, if it is not yours, can you take those steps necessary to put the other folk on notice that they may or may not have a hazardous condition that ought to be remedied?
Will do.
I'd hate to see an accident and this left hanging out there, so
Will
to
do.
speak.
Any other comments? The diversity report, please.
Before I move on to diversity, I want to point out that the coordination that takes place with the engineering department is really a coordination between safety, transportation, and engineering. And what has been accomplished by this department in the last 2 years, I've not seen in my career. It's been tremendous. We've been fortunate with the weather, but the type of work that's going on is usually the work that's not seen, and that's why it's important that we give reports like this so you can see how many ties have gone in, how much has been done in surfacing, how many let's just say there was a lot that needed to be worked on that was done, and we've also had the cooperation of our unions as well as we moved a lot of this work into evenings and weekends in order to be able to get these levels of accomplishment.
With respect, I think you ought to be commended for delivering on a promise. The promise was to do the work, get it done fast, and get it back on a schedule that works. I compliment you.
We aren't back on a schedule that works yet. We're not into cycle maintenance yet, and we're probably at least 2 years away from getting that because that's how much work we still have to go and do. And I just want to make sure that I've been candid enough about that as well.
Yes.
Two very quick comments. One, I mentioned this once before, Glenn. It would be really helpful when you show this data to do it as a percentage of whatever the topic is. I have no idea if 32,750 ties on the Hudson line are a lot, a little, 1%, 20%. I just don't know, and I'm not going to learn it. So because every time you show this, I don't know. Sounds like a lot, but I don't know. So I don't know how many ties to a mile. So could you please do this on a percentage basis, not in lieu of, but in addition to.
I can do
parens 1% or whatever. The second point is, Joe, you get a lot. You deserve to give a lot of credit to the team. You deserve a lot of credit, as my colleague to my left said. I'd like you to get more credit from the public for this activity. So I'd like to just continually increase the communication, especially when this is part of planned maintenance of way and delays are experienced and the riders don't know why. The rider is very happy that they got to work 5 minutes late because you're making their ride more safe. You need to get more credit, whether it's I know the conductors have many other things to do in the train, but if they state this or you just continue all the techniques you keep saying you're using and you do use, let's get credit for it. This month, we just changed out 3% of all railroad ties. Send a tweet that just tells people that stuff. Just let's find a way to get credit in the public's eye for the work you're doing.
Just for info, there are about 2,600 concrete ties per mile, 3,200 wood ties per mile. 2,600 concrete, 3,200 wood ties per mile. Spacing is different.
Now, on the Metro North Diversity EO report, Robert will be, and I guess I'll be there as well. The third quarter report is in the book, and it's going to be discussed in greater detail in the Diversity Committee meeting later today.
With no other comments, we'll move on to the procurements.
There are two procurement actions in the total amount of $3.1 million. There is one non-competitive procurement totaling $2.972 million. There are no competitive procurements, and there's one ratification totaling $134,000.
I move to recommend these procurements. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Discussion? Hello out there? All those in favor? Any opposed? Procurements are moved. The monthly reports?
Monthly reports on Metro North's operations, financial, ridership, and capital program are included in the committee agenda book, and everybody's here and available if you have any questions.
Questions? Motion to adjourn. Second? Those in favor? We're adjourned. That worked.
Yes. I was going to say the